I'm your host, Dean Anderson, and on today's show, we'd like to welcome back for the third time. I have one of my favorite people on the planet, Laird Brush.
Hi, Dean. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah. So we've had you on the show, and this is the third time. And people are like, why would you have him the third time? It's because Laird has a bunch of hats.
Yeah.
The first time we had you on, we were talking about recovery as a whole and kind of looking at those ideas, and then as the executive director of Westover, and then we had you on as an author.
Yes.
Talking about your book, Morning Musings of a Slightly Twisted Mind.
Yes.
And that was wonderful. And now we want to have you back and talking more about, Westover, and talking about what it means to run a treatment center. And I think there's a lot of people in our circles that are kind of curious about the inner workings. They just see it, people show up, they come, they go, and we hear the echoes of rehab or whatever. But it's so much more diverse. And I would love for you to, talk a little bit about what your experience is like being an executive director of a treatment center.
What are my experiences like as an executive director? Well, quickly, Westover Treatment Center will be celebrating 38 years this February, trying to help people find recovery.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misconceptions of what treatment in general looks like. Clients often show up thinking that it's more going to be a hospital setting, institutional. And Westover is a very holistic place. It's an old Victorian building in Thamesville, Ontario, with cornfields all around it right now. So it's certainly not what clients expect. And it's a place where clients learn the skills they need to live a life without substance. We are an abstinence-focused treatment center. Mm-hmm. Our goal is to try and teach our clients to live a life without any mind-altering substances. I think we're the best in the country, and I have the most talented staff in the sector, and we're very good at what we do. As far as what it's like to be an executive director of a treatment center, again, short history. I started at Westover working part-time, weekends, afternoons, midnights, and just working at the Center of Hope here in London at the same time, back and forth. And then was fortunate enough to become a primary counselor, which I love. Being a primary counselor at Westover is a really unique position to have. You get people share things with you that they've probably never told another human being. You get to really connect with the clients. And then our executive director retired, or announced his retirement, and our board decided to look internally for a replacement. So to be quite honest, Dean, I just threw my hat in the ring just so they'd know I was interested with. Really didn't think that I would be the successful candidate, but I was. And so that drive home was kind of, now what do I do? Because I really don't know a whole lot about how to run a treatment center. Mm-hmm. So I rely on my staff very heavily. But basically, running a treatment center is the two biggest challenges that I have as executive director. I guess to back up a little bit, like the program's established. We've been around for 38 years. We do tweak and modify program and to continue with best practices. But what we do is what we do. The biggest challenges from an executive director's standpoint are twofold. One is recruitment and retention for qualified addictions counselors. Mm-hmm. And the second is funding. Westover is a nonprofit charity. We're funded through the Ministry of Health to a certain degree, but we rely on fundraising and donations to fund the rest of the center. So recruiting the right people and the talent that we need, and then being able to pay them enough to keep them are challenges. I've had a lot of really talented people come to the center that get opportunities, closer to home, like in London or in Windsor, or so they don't have to drive.
On the other side of the cornfield?
Yeah, on the other side of the cornfield, for quite frankly, for more money and closer to home. And so they elect to leave, not because they don't like working at Westover, but because, you can't blame them for taking the opportunity close at home. So getting people to come to work for us and getting people to stay is a challenge. And that ties into the fact that being a nonprofit charity and relying on government funding and donations, we don't have the funds to compete against, like a hospital-based treatment center. So,
you mean compete in the way of salary and benefits and that sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
No, we've done a really good job the last few years, myself and my team, of bringing salaries up and benefits and doing things compared to where they were, but we still can't compete against like a hospital-based setting. So that's the challenge. So the way to keep them then is to make Westover a place where they want to work, right? And I think we do a really good job of that too, because the work is exciting. I often say that working in a treatment center is the most rewarding and the most frustrating line of work you can be in. It's very rewarding to see people come into treatment. I often said nobody comes to Westover on a winning streak, right? They're at a point in their lives where they're making a decision to change, and I always say they're going to change everything, right? It's a tough thing to do. So they come in and quite frankly, they're sick, sad, and sorry. And in a very short period of time, in 19 days in residential treatment, you see them change, and you see them open up and become connected with others. And it's very rewarding to see people come from where the addiction has taken them to at least beginning to live a different life, and hopefully a life in recovery. It's also extremely frustrating because, as you know, not everybody, well, we can get into a whole conversation about what is success. No, not everybody grasps what we try to instill, right? And so as rewarding as it is to see people commence from Westover and live better lives, not a week goes by that we don't hear about losing one of our clients to this disease. And it's very frustrating. So it can be a very much of a roller coaster through the week.
Lots of balance and ups and downs. And what do you think is the most rewarding part of your job specifically? I know that we have the lens of the counselors, and they can see when success has happened, and I get to see it, luckily, in my life. But as someone who is the leader of those people, what's the most rewarding part for you?
Well, nothing can. I don't think anything can replace the reward of working with an individual as a counselor, as a primary counselor, and seeing that change in them. And I still get to witness that. That's very rewarding. But from my position and my role, what's exciting for me is constantly improving what we do. We're constantly tweaking program and the actual physical footprint of the center. So when I took over this role, since I've taken over this role, we have done things to make the center more not hospitable or more homey. We've upgraded all our HVAC. We have installed Wi-Fi and smart boards in all our classrooms. We've got new flooring, new windows. We've made the place a more pleasant place to be, not just for our clients, but for our staff, right? So it's a good place to be. It's a fun place to be. We start our mornings off. Everybody gathers in my office, and we put on some music before shift starts in the morning, and we sing and we dance, and we get into a positive space, because I mean, you can't help people if you're not in a place where you can help them, right? So one of the rewarding things from my perspective is to see how much the morale has changed since I took over the role. I think we have a much better cohesiveness in our staff. I think we're connected. We're very much a family. You often hear people in a leadership role talk about having an open door policy, right? But it's not truly an open door policy. I have an open door policy.
It's an open door when you want to tell me something I feel like that.
Exactly. I have an open door policy. People come to me, my staff, it feels comfortable to come to me, not just with work-related issues or maybe they're having trouble with a particular client or programming or whatever it may be, but with the issues that are going on in their own life. And they feel comfortable coming to talk to me about those things and say, hey, this is what's going on, and I need some help, and we help each other.
I heard someone say a while back when I was at a group function, and this woman as a leader said, I want to act like my team are whole people,
Yeah.
but I don't want to hear the whole answer. I don't want to hear the whole story.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can that be true? So that open door is to include the fact that you got some shit going on at home and you got your own life.
Yeah.
And I also noticed that one of the valuable pieces of Westover is the family or the team.
Yeah.
Are a lot of lived experience.
Absolutely.
So
most of my staff has lived experience, either in addiction or codependency. All of the staff are people living in recovery from addiction or codependency. I'm the polar opposite of a micromanager. I believe that you hire the right people, you bring the right people on, and then give them the freedom to do their jobs. I don't look over anybody's shoulder. And that gets back to, I guess, our conversation about retention and recruitment. We bring on the staff, and the staff that we've had there are more than capable. They're extremely talented people. They don't need me telling them how to do their jobs. They know how to do their jobs. My job is to make sure that they have the tools that they need, and whatever resources they need to be able to do that. But I'm the polar opposite of micromanager. You were brought on because you have this certain skill set, and run with it. Go ahead and do it, and do the work. That's, I think, another unique thing about Westover in particular is every one of our counselors has a different approach. There are different styles in the classroom. They have different styles in their one-on-one counseling, and I think that's one of the things that makes us special. We have some counselors that are more, hard on their clients, not hard on their clients, but more firm with their clients. And
assertive. We'll use the word assertive.
We'll use the word assertive. And we have some that are more laid back and they do more listening than they do talking. And that plays well together, right? They work well off each other. So, the clients aren't getting one person up there teaching them about assertiveness or about communication or about 12 steps or anything. They're getting different styles, different approaches, different perspectives on what those things are. And I think that's one of the other things that makes it very special.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that, and I've had the pleasure of meeting many of those people, and I can see how that
they're a pretty good bunch.
Absolutely. And then so it sounds like your most rewarding role is being a support to the people so that they can help the people.
Yeah.
And I think that goes overlooked a lot.
Yeah. Well, already from the beginning, I'm an alumnus of Westover. So when I was a primary counselor, my ability to connect with the clients, I think was enhanced by the fact that I'd sat in that chair. I'd been through what you're going through, not just in terms of a recovery process, but in this facility. I've actually been there and was easy to connect. And in my role now as executive director, it's the same. There's not a position in the facility that I haven't done. Working weekends, midnights, afternoons, primary counseling. I've done all those things. I even taken on a maintenance role when I've needed to, right? So I understand what the work entails. I understand how rewarding it can be. I understand how taxing it can be and how draining it can be. Of course, I also understand what it takes to do those jobs, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it's the nuance. I think. So what I just heard was I don't just have lived experience from the addiction side. I have lived experience as a leader as well to be an employee and to be able
absolutely.
to be that.
And it's funny because my career before I came into recovery, and I think I've shared this with you before. I worked in manufacturing my whole life. In a management role, I was a general foreman in a truck plant down in Chatham for a long time. But I've always worked in a supervisory role in manufacturing. I think I learned a lot on how to work with people and build teams in that space, and translated a lot of that into Westover as a space. So, I try to run Westover very much as a business as well, right? We're in the helping field, but we need to make sure that the place is viable and it stays viable.
Awesome.
And that's a big part of what I'd have to do now too.
So I'm going to put a pin in that because you brought up the business, and we're going to segue because I've got questions about how the heck do you make the money work, how to make those things go. But we'll do that right after this break. We're talking more with Laird Brush.
Hi, Dean.
Hi, Laird. So we put a pin in it because you had brought up that it's still a business, and it is still a business, and I recognize that. And then you had mentioned that there's a whole bunch of funding pieces that have to make that work. And I know, just from being someone who works in the field, that Westover probably has one of the least expensive residential treatment, if not the least expensive residential treatment in Ontario. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about how you manage that, because there are some beds that are paid for through the government, but then there's ones that, you know, people can pay to go, and all of those bits and pieces. And I don't think people even get the gist or the idea how it works. It's like, is it free? Or then some people all think it's going to cost them $50,000 to go. And I think there's more to that. Can we talk a little bit about
Absolutely.
the box?
Absolutely. And there are treatment centers that will cost you $50,000 or more.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier, Westover is a nonprofit charity, so we rely on funding from the government. I report to a volunteer board, and I'm very fortunate to have. I have a great. Our board is fantastic. It's a very diverse board. There are people on the board with lived experience. There are people on the board without lived experience. They went from all sorts of different, and they have. Their job is I work for the board of directors. Everybody else at Westover works for me, and so I report to the board, and they have allowed me the freedom to run the center. They don't stand over my shoulder. I report to them what goes on, but they don't get involved in the day-to-day functioning. So first off, I wanted to mention that I'm very appreciative of the board of directors that we have. So the way the funding works for us is the Ministry of Health sends money to Ontario Health West, in our case, as a funding body, and then that money gets dispersed down.
Which used to be called the LINs?
The LINs,
so
yes.
Just for people that don't know, it's...
Actually, the LINs are going to be the health team. So the way it's supposed to work is the Ministry of Health will send funding to Ontario Health West. Ontario Health West, and that's the jurisdiction we're in, will send it to the health teams in those regions, and then the health teams in those regions will dispense the funds to the agencies in their area. Okay. Westover, I sit on the steering committee for two health teams, the Chatham-Kent Ontario Health Team and the Sarnia-Lambton Ontario Health Team. So I'm very fortunate to have our feet under the table on both those health teams. But that process isn't set up yet. So the LINs are gone, the OHTs are there, but that funding stream hasn't really started. So right now, instead of the money going from the ministry to Ontario Health to the health teams, it goes from the ministry to Ontario Health and then is dispersed. They haven't got, the health teams are all at different levels of development, and they haven't got to the point where they are.
So they're still in training. They haven't turned on the taps for it to go that
exactly
yet.
that
okay.
kind
that
of thing.
Makes sense. Because I remember the LINs were doing that.
That's right.
And then they had broken that down. I thought there was a transition directly to, but they're taking a break and...
It hasn't happened yet, right? Like, for example, the Chatham-Kent Ontario Health Team is further along in their development than the Sarnia-Lambton Ontario Health Team, because they start up at different times. So and there's over 50 health teams in the province, until all of them are at the same level, I don't believe that funding model will change. It's going to stay Ministry of Health to Ontario Health, in our case, West, and then it gets dispensed. So can I talk numbers, specific numbers?
I'm super cool with it as long as you're not going to get smacked for it or get in trouble for it. Then you go ahead and throw those out there all day. I'm curious, actually.
All right, so it basically costs us about $2.2 million a year to run the center. Okay. And all the programming that we do, so it costs $2.2 million. We're funded through the ministry and Ontario Health to about $1.7 million. About 70% of what it takes to run the center is funded through the government.
Okay.
The rest of that we have to make up on our own. So we rely on fundraising, and our alumni is great with fundraising for us, and donations, and we're very grateful for any donations we get, and the private pay clients.
Okay.
So Westover has so many beds that are funded by the government, and then so many private pay beds. And ideally, it's hard to explain. Ideally, a group would come in and we would have private pay people, private pay clients in every group. That just doesn't happen. It costs $10,000 to attend Westover Treatment Center, which I know $10,000 is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money compared to other treatment facilities. And we rely on that number. So I budget in that I'm going to get so much money from private pay. And if I don't, then I fall short of my budget. I don't have enough money to continue to run the center, right? And that's actually the position we're in right now, because the nature of addiction and the current economic conditions, and people are reluctant to pay, right? And the other thing that works against us at Westover is we have a relatively short wait time. But from the time somebody submits all the necessary paperwork to come to Westover and the time they actually come into the center is about 6 to 8 weeks. Again, it might sound a lot to somebody that's listening, but it's not compared to other places. It can take over a year to get into some treatment centers. So 6 to 8 weeks. So somebody's saying, well, I can go to treatment for free in 2 months, or I can pay $10,000 and go in 3 weeks. And say, I'm not going to spend $10,000 to save me a month and a half.
And to clarify, the $10,000 for 3 weeks is there's still some paperwork. There's still some things that have to happen. It's not just you show up at the door with 10 grand and you're like, where's my bed, right?
No.
It's not like a detox center. Plus, there's other prerequisites to getting into the program. So the 3 week wait is...
Yeah, so in order to come for a funded bed, you have to have an assessment done at an outside referral source. And then along with some Westover paperwork and medical forms, once that package is received by us, our admissions coordinator will reach out to the client, give them a date for admission. This is the date that you're expected to come in, blah, blah, blah. If it's a private pay, we'll do that assessment work in-house, so you don't have to go to an outside referral. And that's basically what shortens the wait time. Treatment doesn't change. It's not like if you pay to come to Westover, you get a view of the beach or 9 holes of golf.
There's no mint on my pillow?
Yeah, no. Oh. It's the same. All it does is shorten the wait time. And since our wait time is relatively short to begin with, our private pay numbers are not where I need them to be to meet the budget.
To get up to that 2.2.
Exactly. Yeah, okay. Exactly. And $2.2 million, and again, being a nonprofit charity, I don't expect the government to fund us to 100% of what we do. I'm absolutely okay with relying on funding or fundraisers and donations and that kind of thing. But that gap from 75% funding to 100% funding in today's dollars, that's a big gap for us to try to make up, right? People are reluctant, people who aren't in recovery or who have no experience with addictions or with addicts in their lives or anything, are very reluctant to part with their money to give it to addictions, because they have this, again, we've talked before about the stigma attached to the disease. I always say, if we were saving kittens, people would give us money. We're not. We're saving lives, but we're saving addicts' lives, and people are reluctant to say, well, I'm going to donate, instead of to this, I'm going to donate to a treatment center. They're reluctant to do that. The stigma attached to it, and that's the biggest challenge. Now the government recently announced a 5% base funding increase to community-based treatment. So we did get a 5% increase in our base funding, which, as I mentioned in the earlier numbers, amounts to about $85,000 per year. Again, sounds like a big number, but it's not. A 5% base funding increase, and due to current economic conditions, our food costs alone went up 11%. What you got to understand is that people live with us for the time that they're there. So, it's a big house, and we got 30 clients that we're feeding at a time, or more, depending on whether we have other programs running. So we could have, theoretically, we could have 40 people living at Westover that we have to feed and we house, and we got to keep the heat on and the lights on, and as you know, in your own lives, all those costs have gone up. They've gone up for us too, and the funding from the government hasn't matched those increases by even half.
Extremely difficult.
Right.
Sure.
So we tend to fall deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole, right? So right now we run a deficit, and that's fine as a charity to run in a deficit, but a deficit is uncomfortably large because of the gap between what we're funded and what it costs to run the center.
Okay. And I see that, and I hopefully everyone is out there listening to what's happening. There's something, we only got a couple of minutes left, and there's something very important that you wanted to talk about in regards to that funding and looking for additional money to help people in a different way. And we're talking about virtual day programming. So being able to help people and not have that overhead cost of food and shelter and all that stuff. So in a nutshell, in a minute and a half,
okay.
can you put it out there, the value of what this means? And you can even, if you want to do an Eddie Murphy and break the fourth wall and stare right in the camera, you don't have to. But if we're looking to get some people to recognize the value in it. So shoot.
So virtual day program, we fired it up during the pandemic, not as a result of response to COVID, but to address historical barriers to treatment. People can't get to treatment because of distance, because of jobs, because of their nursing moms, they're on house arrest, medication issues, mental health issues that prevent them from coming to residential treatment. The virtual day program took all of that away. There were next to no barriers to coming into treatment, and there was very little wait time to coming into treatment. We launched that over COVID, again, not as a response to COVID, but because we were allowed the technology to be able to do that. Hugely successful program. Just under 400 people access treatment resources through that program while we had it running. We did use some COVID dollars to do that, and then we dug into our own reserves to keep it running, and consistently asking the government to fund it fully. I had to shut it down in August. I had to lay off 2 extremely talented addiction counselors because I had to shut the program down. And as I mentioned, getting and keeping quality people is difficult for us. And yet I had to lay off 2 of them. And that was heartbreaking, and shut the program down, despite the fact that it was proven to save lives and to help people. The cost of running our virtual day program was $285,000 a year.
Okay.
It cost me $2.2 million to run the center. It cost $285,000. I can see about 500 people in residential treatment. I see 400 people in VDP.
Okay.
The success rates out of the VDP were comparable to they were out of residential treatment. We had people celebrating multiple years, more than 2 years of continuous sobriety just as a result of the VDP, and the government has not been willing to fund the $285,000.
And we're going to cut it right there, and we're going to say thank you so much for watching today. $285,000 is not a lot when we're talking about that amount of lives.
It's a cup of coffee.
And if you want to make some noise about it, or you want to reach out to Laird or figure out ways that we can make this happen for Westover, we appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching.